Alrighty.
Is on.
Alrighty. Welcome to our webinar today. It is great to see everyone here. We're going to be talking about a lot of good stuff. And yes, unfortunately, we're going to be talking about insurance. My friend Rusty on the call is probably going to say, God, come on, Will, don't give me so hard a time. But yes, guys, we're going to be talking about insurance premiums today and how cybersecurity can affect your insurance premiums. I've got some great speakers on with me today and want to, guys, let's find out where everybody's calling in from. If you don't mind, throw in the chat if you don't mind where you're calling in from. Definitely would love to see that. We have clients up and down the East Coast. I think we have clients in 23 states, and we got 7 offices. So we've got Atlanta here. But John and Rusty, are you guys ready for this today?
Let's go, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. So I think we've given enough time for people to get in. Good to see everyone here today. Today, we're going to be talking about proactive steps you can take to reduce your cybersecurity insurance premium. I know when I was actually going through this process for the company, that long checkbox of make sure I'm checking everything off, and it's not just the cyber insurance; it's general liabilities and errors and omission and cybercrime insurance. I feel like sometimes I get insuranced out, and I'm sure you guys do as well. But I think what we want to really share with you guys today is the true importance of why that cyber insurance premium is there and why you actually need it in place. So for all of you guys that don't know me, my name is Will Nobles. I'm the founder and CEO of Vector Choice. And I've been in the IT industry for about 25 years now, a little over 25 years. Guys, that makes me feel old. But yes, it is. I've got 2 degrees in technology. I have worked from Fortune 500 companies down to Fortune 100 companies. Started Vector Choice in 2008, where we've grown the company, and we follow our processes that we follow in our company. We follow the EOS process and culture index. It helps us hire amazing people, and to mention amazing people that we hire. One of our special guests today is John DePero. John came to us from the Army, and he was a counterintelligence specialist for the Army, and has done a lot of work across military and governance and compliancy. But John is our chief compliance officer here at Vector Choice. And then also another special guest we have with us today is Rusty Goodwin. Rusty is the mastermind insurance guy that I've been privileged to be on stage with several times. He works for Midstate Group, and he's really going to be educating you guys today. I'm going to have his contact information at the end of the PowerPoint and end of the presentation here, so you can provide him if you want to reach out to him and talk about your insurance. He is going to be there for you as well. But let me share you a little bit before we get started today, a little bit about Vector Choice and who we are. Here is my awesome management team that keeps me going and keeps me afloat. I would say they're my left hand, right foot, and left foot. But this is the staff that does it for me. If you actually are a current client of ours, or you're looking at another company taking over your IT, these guys and plus myself will definitely take care of you. So a lot of people say, well, Will, what do you do? IT spans across multiple areas, right? Well, we focus on cybersecurity, outsourced IT, and compliancy. And we really want to make sure that your network is secured, managed properly, and also taking care of the day-to-day support tickets that you might put in. We also have phone hosting. We are partnered with Office 365 or Microsoft 365, and we also do all kinds of IT consulting services for you as well. We have had the privilege of, and I actually can announce it, it's August. My marketing team is probably saying, Will, you keep talking about it, but we actually made the Inc. 5000 again this year. And we also made and this is official, I can announce that since this is being August. And then we also made the MSP 501, which guys, if you don't know, it's not well known as like the Inc. 500 or 5000, but the MSP 501 is the top 501 managed services providers in the world, not just the United States, but in the world. So we're honored to be, I think, 113 on the MSP 501 there. A little bit about where we're located. We're in 7 different cities. We're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, is where our headquarters is at in Atlanta. That's where I live, but we have offices in several locations, and we support clients in an additional 23 states and multiple other countries as well. So, guys, let's get down to it. John and Rusty, thank you guys so much for being on today.
Glad to be here with you all.
So, guys, let's talk about, I think the biggest thing, we get these forms in, and as a business owner or a decision maker of a company, and you're like, what the heck is this? And I remember the day the form was just a few questions. Now it seems like it's multiple pages. So, Rusty, why so many questions?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for telling everybody right away that I'm the insurance guy. You just made sure that everybody on the call is liked more than me because people hate insurance. So thank you for that. That's
no problem. No problem.
Well, I was joking around with somebody this morning. Leave it to insurance actuaries to move faster than even the U.S. government when it comes to solving cybersecurity issues. If you look back, say 3 or 4 years ago, I'm going to try to give you some context here about the why behind the what of all these applications becoming so complicated. 3 or 4 years ago, insurance carriers were keeping 70 cents on every dollar in premium paid for cyber liability policies. Well, this year they were only keeping 30 cents, and 70 cents was going out of the claim. So it's really kind of turned their world upside down, and then in turn everybody else's world upside down. But remember, an insurance company's job is to accept the transfer of risk, which they really don't want to do unless they have to. So they're going to make sure that you as the client, we as the clients, are doing everything that we can do to mitigate the chance that those risks are going to happen. Remember, when you buy insurance, you're not reducing any risk. You're just transferring that. So what the carriers, and John can speak more to this too, what the government is starting to do, a lot of our customers and vendors are starting to do, is to make sure we have the right things in place so that the bad events don't happen in the first place. And I know it kind of sucks, but we all hope that the insurance that we sell you is something you'll never have to use. And so that has made the process of getting any kind of insurance, but specifically today, cyber liability, not just a little more difficult, a lot more difficult. And they want to make sure that you're adopting those correct behaviors.
Yeah, Rusty, a question for you is, I hear so many times our clients say, well, I'm not going to get cyber insurance because the insurance company is not going to pay it out anyway. What truth is to that?
Well, I mean, it's getting a little bit more true in the last couple of years, but it's not, you can make numbers say whatever you want, right? If you arrange them the right way. So you'll hear some figures that say 49% of all claims that are filed are either not paid or underpaid. And there is some truth to that, but a huge percentage of those things that were not paid or underpaid were because the end customer lied on the application. The terse word is it's fraud. We try to say they weren't exactly truthful in the application.
They didn't understand what they were doing,
or they made promises and made commitments that they had no idea what they meant or how earnest that contract language was in that policy. And an insurance policy is nothing but a contract. And so you're making promises in those insurance applications and in those policies that you're going to have to keep, or the insurance company doesn't have to pay. So we can, and I hate insurance as much as everybody else, even though I sell it, but the insurance company is simply going to follow the letter of that contract. So if we don't like the fact that these claims didn't get paid, we need to go back and look what we agreed to when we signed the contract. And it's even though the contracts are complicated, that theory is simple. Pay attention to what you're signing. And that's where having a good MSP, having a good insurance agent that can help you understand those commitments is really important.
Yeah, John, what do you see when these forms come out from our clients?
So it's precision guided language, right? Banks and insurance companies and the federal government have teams of lawyers. And when they say happy, they mean happy, and they're going to rake you over to coals if you have glad. They know the difference between happy and glad.
Yes.
And I don't think there's malice. They just don't even consider small medium business owners, whether you know the difference. A good vignette for that is a number of companies that I go into to help fill out a cybersecurity application or a HIPAA or whatever it is multi-factor authentication. It's a commonly known, very effective way to help hedge yourself against ransomware and exploit. So when your insurance form says, do you require a different language, and the language has changed, right? Multi-factor authentication. Now, an uneducated business owner may look at their contract from their MSP and it says MFA is included. Oh, good. Then I check, yes, I have that. Included, maybe when the MSP wrote the contract meant we don't charge you extra. There's a difference between it's available for no additional fee compared to we've deployed it,
right,
to compared to we require it. So an example of that is it's included, no extra, but we never set it up. That would be your worst case scenario. The medium scenario is when we onboarded you, we deployed it, but then Rusty found it annoying, so he went in and turned it off on his computer.
Yeah.
And this happens, right?
Yep.
So when that company files a claim, their forensic auditor comes in and says, hey, the compromise was to Will's account, but we found this Rusty guy that doesn't even have MFA. You lied on your underwriting document. You don't have MFA, right? And then the third one is, let's say we set it up, but did you enforce it across all logins? I can't tell you the number of times I go in and do an assessment and I find out, oh yeah, MFA is set up by the managed service company, but it's not applied to mobile devices. They can use a mobile login that's not requiring MFA. But when I compare it to the language in the underwriting contract, the language doesn't say, well, for your desktop, but we don't care about your phone, right? It typically says across all logins. So that's where we help companies understand what is the insurance company actually asking you when they ask you, do you use MFA? Read the whole paragraph, not just the header checklist.
Well, and John, and I would add to that, no matter what the example, whether it's MFA or phishing training or password management, I would say the fourth leg on that chair is, can you prove and document that you've done all those things? And that's key for not just insurance, but also for all the government entities that you guys deal with. If you can't document it, it never happened.
And Rusty, that brings up a good point. A lot of times, our customers and just people I meet, I've got an IT. That's what you're supposed to be doing, right? And I think really understanding what IT really is and managed services is we're supporting and managing your current environment, but managed services is not the compliancy portion, right? That's they make sure that you are 2FA is installed on every machine, every device at all times. Make sure phishing training and all the other things, right? And actually keep a log of that. So if something does happen, because hey, we all know when you get hacked, it doesn't happen today. I mean, you might notice it today, but they've probably been in your system for 6 to 7 months already.
Oh, easy.
And so you want to be able to go back to show the insurance company to go back and say, hey, here's everything that we said that we did, checked on the checkbox that we're actually doing, right? And we've met those requirements.
Yeah, compliance is so, and Will, I think you've heard me say this before, so I'm sorry that you have to hear it again, but it's a great example. The MSPs are very, very diligently building these very sophisticated bank vault doors with complex locking mechanisms that nobody can crack. Compliance is the business owners remembering to shut that bank vault door when they leave the business so that all the stuff that you created actually does some good, right? And then documenting that you shut the door. And it really does have to be, and John, you and I have talked about this, almost as compliance as a culture within an organization. It's got to be a top-down, multiple stakeholders paying attention to it, because if it's all going to rely on the internal IT or the external MSP, it can't have the best chance of succeeding. Everybody's got to be a player in this. Everybody's got to be a contributor and a stakeholder in this to make sure that we're as risk mature as we can possibly be. And that's where the compliance comes in. And to even push it a step further, I would say the more proactive you can be. In fact, I like it that was proactive in your title of this webinar, because I see the business owners who, instead of just complying, which in my mind is just doing the bare minimum that's asked of you, the guys who choose to be rulers instead of to be ruled are the ones that win, the ones that take governance over their situation, over their organizations, make the real decisions. And I've heard John say this a lot, even decide what risk you can tolerate. You don't have to transfer every risk. There may be some that you're happy to take, and just document why. But if you want to get insurance, you have to at least address the risks that the carriers want you to address. But I see the most successful organizations are the ones that decide, hey, we're going to rule our own house. We're going to govern ourselves according to the risk, not just meet that minimum requirement of compliance and be ruled by people who don't know our business.
Yep.
They're a much stronger position to be in.
Yeah, definitely. So, and guys, anybody listening, if you have any questions for John, myself, or Rusty, please put it in the chat, and we'll address that as we're going. But my next question, and John, I'll start with you, is what's the common things companies are doing that they're missing that is causing their higher premiums when it comes to the cyber insurance policies?
The number one most simple thing is they have someone fill out the form that doesn't understand the questions. That's it right there, right? It's someone from the CFO's office, or they send it, they call their MSP and they get the help desk technician on the phone, and the help desk technician is, doing his best, but his discipline is maybe password resets and network configurations, right? What you need is someone who actually has read compliance policy documents for a living as a discipline, to take a look at that, to understand what they're asking, and then provide you the answers that are accurate, right? That's just talking about that specific type. The number one thing companies doing wrong is having the wrong person help you fill out the form. Rusty.
And I would say a close second to that is having an agent or broker that doesn't understand enough how to walk you through that application either. They need to know what they're asking you to commit to. They need to be looking out for you. And I would add to that also, again, because the after effects of what John and I just said is you've got companies now that have committed to things that nobody in their organization, and sometimes not even their MSP, realizes they've promised to do. And so you've just set yourselves up for failure, because you got to your point, John, you got a CFO just randomly answering these questions. Nobody ever bothered to tell the people who have to make you secure. Yep. And there's a huge disconnect there.
And not only are you not telling the security people, you're not telling the actual owner of the risk, right? I work for Will. He's the CEO. He owns a company. All the risk decisions really live with him. I provide him some options. I give him pro and con. I try and give him 3 choices. I give him the one that's ridiculous, he won't choose, the one that costs too much, and the one I really wanted him to do anyways, right? So, I joke, but it's Will's risk. Even though he has a compliance manager, even though he has a chief security officer and an operations chief, and a lot of small, medium businesses, small owner operator, one thing. That's, you're talking directly to the owner of the risk. But as companies grow and you start getting a staff and a team to help you with this stuff, a lot of times the person making decisions on behalf of the organization around security, IT, insurance, compliance, they're not informing and getting guidance from the risk owner.
Well, and you're exactly right, John, because what you've got sometimes, say it's a CFO, that person might be making just a dollar-driven decision. Or if you're talking, and sometimes this actually runs through, an HR type person who has multiple hats, right? They're in charge of compliance and safety and HR. They make more of a desire-driven decision, like how much more work is this going to cause me? That's the only question they care about, right? Yeah. And it really has to come down to the owner who does own that risk, providing them with all the data they need to make a data-driven decision, so that we don't look in the face of having to react and recover in the face of bad actors.
I come from an Army background. You don't eliminate risk in most situations, right? There are high risk operations that happen every day. I supported overseas contingency operations where I went to generals and said, here's all the bad things that are probably going to happen. Here's how we make them go from really bad to just bad, or to having it happen 10 times to at least 4 times. The world is risky. We have insurance, we have security. What I try to help my clients when I talk to them is understand, there is a vector there between risk tolerance and business function you're still trying to accomplish, and just let them make an informed, educated decision.
Right.
Right.
And
And
John,
we'll be wherever you're comfortable.
John, when you're helping clients fill out these forms and you're working with them, I'm assuming you're taking in their industry, their compliancy requirements of their state, or any kind of HIPAA or PCI type compliance, or CMMC. You're taking that in consideration as you're working on those forms as well too.
100%. Because if I can put one solution in that satisfies 3 different external organizations, let's align it to make sure everyone's happy. I don't want to spoiler alert the future, but those of you who've been paying attention to credit cards in the news, there's a new cybersecurity requirement for everybody who takes credit cards.
Yep.
Doesn't matter that you pay some company to put a widget at your counter and you never technically touch them. Doesn't matter. If it's in your building, you have new cybersecurity requirements, right? Why are we not aligning those to your cybersecurity insurance policy, to any state privacy laws, right? Compliance is simply demonstrating that you're doing what you claim that you're going to do, right? It's to prove it. And to your both y'all's point earlier, I typically don't have to prove it in real time. I typically have to prove it 6 or 8 months later, right?
Right.
But if you don't have the tools in place today, and why would I build a tool that proves it for insurance, and then a tool that proves it for HIPAA, and then a tool that proves it for credit cards, right? Let's just have one total system that is, we 6 months later can prove it to whoever we need to prove it to. The other piece of it is not all compliance requirements are external. Yes, and we're here talking today about insurance, and that's naturally what we're going to kind of stick to. And most importantly, what can I do to make my bills cheaper next year, right? Or cheaper than they're going to be, at least. They might not be cheaper this year, but at least not have them go up at the rate that maybe Rusty would have them go up.
Yeah.
But
so Rusty, I know we talked about quickly about what's being denied, right? There's a percentage of being denied, and I don't know if you know this number, but what is the cost of not having cybersecurity insurance, and what's the cost of misinforming? I'm not going to say lying or fraud, but misinforming on the document. What's that? Do you know a dollar? Is there a dollar amount that sort of costs companies for that?
So I know that 43% of all attacks come against small and medium businesses, and 60% of those businesses that get hacked go out of business within 6 months.
Wow. That's crazy.
So let's say you stay in bed. There was an interesting article I read, and I can never remember this guy's first name. If somebody in here knows it, put it in the chat, because I can never remember his first name. Last name is Morgan. He was the CEO of Bank of America back in 2015. And he said this. He said, if we're honest with ourselves, the cybersecurity budget is the only department that we would say has an unlimited budget. Because if we get attacked, there's no amount of money we won't spend to make ourselves whole. And you have costs related to notification, which is about $150 per name. In fact, I dealt with a health center, and I said, let's just pretend that you had a very generous donor who paid all of your costs for getting a breach except for notification. And notification costs you $150 per name in your database. How much would you have to write a check for? And she said, she got a calculator out. She said, $3.7 million. I said, do you think that would be a bankrupting event for you? I said, how much is your cyber liability policy for? She goes, $250,000. I said, well, do you think 3.675 would bury you? Or, how you feel about that risk? And there are plenty of organizations that will decide they don't need cyber liability, and that is fine, if they've taken a good look at the risk and the liability behind it and decide they want to assume that. But there are public relations costs, there's notification costs. There could be, if there's nothing criminal even, there could be civil penalties. In fact, in recent years, the government has allowed civil penalties to be levied against C-suite individuals and board members under the duty of care and fiduciary care. And so now you've got individuals having to whip out their checkbooks and pay penalties as well. And so business owners ought to really pay attention to the issues that are out there facing them, the implications of handling or not handling those issues, and then the interventions that guys like John and Will have to put in place to mitigate those issues. That's what the better organizations do.
And keep in mind, we're talking about mitigating risk, right? And there's a different risk from an IT point of view. Like you get ransomware and you can't get your data, right? Are we talking about the cost to physically recover from a ransomware event? That's the hard labor cost. Maybe you got to buy a new server. Maybe, John and Will need to spend 20 hours working on it. Like there's hard costs to recover, but you can insure loss of business and other types of costs. And maybe I know on a call with an MSP and talking IT guys, we tend to focus on things like MFA, and I'm guilty of it because there's my example, right? But maybe Rusty can also talk about other costs that maybe aren't on the top of our mind from an IT incident that you can still insure against under an IT or considering those in your bigger policies.
Yeah, when you think about your insurance, there's a whole suite of policies. I call it the executive risk type stuff. So your cyber liability, your cyber crime, your regular crime. Sometimes your regular crime will lie under your general liability, but also errors and omissions, or some people call that professional liability. To your point, John, inside your general liability will be, business loss. You need to make sure, and then directors and officers, you need to make sure all those work together to provide coverage. Then whatever umbrella you might have over all the top of that to make sure that's structured the same way, so that you have every chance to pull from these various policies in the event that something bad happens. But all of these are going to be tied together to certain behaviors that are required to attain each of these policies. And so you got to, now, especially now, it's not just an obligation to write a check for a premium. There are behaviors they want you to adopt to adhere to this contract. And there's a difference, right? If I say, well, think about my homeowner's insurance, right? If I say, hey, I think my roof is about 5 years old, and the wind blows it off and they found out it was 6 years old, that's not fraud. I represented the best of my knowledge that my roof is about 5 years old. That's called a representation. But if I make a warranty, if I say, if you give me a discount, I will put a burglar alarm system in my home, and then I don't, now they don't have to pay. So there's a difference between things you're representing to the best of your knowledge and the thing that you're committing to do. Well, in the cyber liability world, all those things that they want you to do, you're warrantying, you're promising that you will do those things. And there's no wiggling out of it if you don't. And so the average cost for recovery, and again, this spans a broader range of businesses. So if you're a tiny business, you may not imagine these dollars, but the average cost for breach is about $1 million for an SMB. Last year in 2021, businesses lost $6 trillion with a T, $6 trillion to breaches. And globally, we spend about $250 billion on hardware and software, but yet 95% of all breaches come from human error. And that's where the compliance piece comes in. And that's why the insurance companies want to make sure we're behaving properly, because we're spending all this money that should be doing us some good, except the dummies like me keep not shutting the bank vault door when we leave. So we've got to impact these human behaviors so that we are a harder target for these bad actors.
So Rusty, how can one prove to underwriting, as you're going through the underwriting process, that you're actually meeting these requirements?
Well, my favorite way is a monthly or quarterly report from your internal IT or MSP that documents, like we talked about before, all the things that you're doing. So I'm going to pick on you, Will. Let's say that you and John both work for me, and we do phishing training regularly. And John never clicks on the fake email, and you always do.
Yep.
So the important thing I can say is, all right, Will keeps failing. Now it's not just an IT issue. Here's what our HR policy is. Here's what our disciplinary policy is for guys like Will who keep on clicking on the phishing scams, right? And that we've taken those steps with you, whether it's throw you off the roof or take your computer or, lock you out of the building, whatever it is, we follow those to a T. We've shown continuous improvement, and you can document it all. Carriers love to see that. Because whether you're looking into the face of an insurance adjuster or a government authority, they know if somebody wants to get you bad enough, they will. But they also can tell if you're making any effort whatsoever to make yourself a harder target. And that's what they want to see. They want to see that proof of life. Hey, we have a plan in place. To John's point, we do pay for multi-factor authentication. They want to see that proof of life. They want to see that you train to that policy. Hey, we teach everybody how to use the MFA, and we have made sure everybody's logged on. We enforce it. They want to see that training to those policies. And then the most important, they wanted that you can document that you've done all those things. If you can do that, especially with the help of an MSP, you can really push back hard on the carriers and sometimes get a better rate. Sometimes even show to them, hey, I know this is something you want me to do, but I'm doing all these other things, and this is something that really doesn't apply to my business at all. And get them to waive that warranty. But you've got to have knowledge on your side. You've got to have a trusted professional or advisor on your side to help you walk through that. Because I have no problem charging hell with a water pistol facing those carriers for my clients if I know they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
If I know, and I'll go to bat for them 100% of the time.
And I've seen a lot of times they think they have it, something happens, and then they're scrambling to prove anything at that point. And I see it. I mean, it's way too many times, and I feel bad for companies when they're doing it that way. Is they think they have something, but they don't have proof, and then they end up not having it once the auditors come in and actually audit with the insurance auditors. So it's never pretty if you're not really doing the steps that Rusty was just laying out.
Well, and I'll tell you how seriously we take it at our company. And again, we're not an MSP like you guys. We're insurance, but we still care about compliance. If my customers won't do what I want, one of two things happens. One, I make them sign a letter of declination so I can tell you in 6 months I told you so. Or if it's really egregious, I fire them. I just don't want them in my book of business because they're destined to fail. But it's important for all business owners to understand, John, I think you made the strongest point of the whole day. Hey, business owners out there, you own this risk whether you want to own it or not. And you can try to transfer it, but if you don't do it the right way, you still own it. and get the right kind of advice and the right kind of help.
Yeah. So Rusty, I know we talked about like what can happen, what will happen, the costs and everything, but what type of coverage do I need in my business? I know we got general liabilities, errors in omission. I learned something new. I think we're on stage about 2 months ago called crime insurance. And then there's cyber security insurance. So talk to what does a company actually need?
So a lot of it depends on what they do, right? So if you are a doctor or a pharmacist or lawyer, accountant, you definitely need E&O and or professional liability, those kinds of things to make it for mistake. If you work at a grocery store, you probably don't need errors and omissions, right? So it can't just be a blanket answer because it really depends on the customer. But if you talk to your broker or if you want to reach out to me, I can look at all the things that your company does and try to do that same layered effect with insurance like you guys try to do with security to make sure we're covered from all angles. Very least, you need to have that general liability that covers your business. I would expect everybody would need cyber liability, some sort of crime, and you need to talk to your broker because under the cyber crimes, I'm going to give you an example of what happened. A medical facility that I work with here, at the time they were not my clients, so I'm very happy they weren't. But somebody camped in their email for a few months and learned how to sound like the chief financial officer. So now the chief financial officer sent an email to accounting saying, wire money to such and such. And they did, $963,000 to be exact. And turns out it was social engineering. It was a bad actor. Well, technically, that's not a crime because the person willingly gave the money. And they didn't have social engineering coverage in their cyber liability policy. So they got nothing. Right.
So even if you have cyber insurance, there's sort of umbrellas or
it depends on the carrier. It depends on the amounts you're getting. And that's why you really need to have sit down with your agent, sit down with your broker and make sure that you really understand what you're committing to. And what I've seen recently too is and I'm not trying to bore you. I know I'm the most hated guy on the call being on the insurance thing.
Oh no, I'm learning myself. So
the declarations page is what most people look like. That shows your premium, what your policy year is, what your limitations, coverages are, all that. But deeper inside in the insuring agreements and in the conditions, it's going to, so on the deck page, it might say that you have ransomware coverage. You're thinking, great. If the guys hack my machine and hold me hostage, I'm covered. But then you look at the mice type in some of the other parts of the document, and it says, oh, by the way, though, we'll only pay 20% of the ransom. You have to pay the other 80%. So you think you have it covered, but you're really not. And again, it's a contract. You should read it.
Small
No one's
print.
trying to, and so you got to have somebody in your team that can help you look for those things. But so your broader question is, you got to look at what you do. And then the other part that will determine what kind of coverage you need is what your vendors or customers may require, right? If you deal, I have some clients, they deal with national companies like Kroger and ConAgra or International Paper, Georgia Pacific. And it doesn't matter what the owner of the company wants. It matters what his kind of coverage his customers want him to have and what kind of compliance they are going to require him to have if he wants to keep doing business with them. So it really does help to be very strategic and be responsive to these requirements ahead of time so that you're not reacting to something, to your point, when what hits the fan and you're trying to recover from a breach. But if you have a good agent, and there are tons of good ones out there, they can help you walk through what you really should have. And if you don't feel like you have a good, if you buy insurance from your brother, please don't call me. I don't want to break up a good relationship. I had one guy, he was asking me all these questions about insurance, and I found out that he and his insurance agent owned a plane together. I'm like, I am not talking to you. That's going to be a very awkward flight next time if I become your new insurance guy. But if I can help you, just reach out to me, and case by case, it's hard to give a general answer for everybody.
Sure. Talk a little bit about crime. Maybe this is just for me on the call,
Sure.
But it's my show, so why not? Talk about the crime and what is that?
So crime under general liability will be things like burglary, if you have an employee endorsement, fidelity bond for employees, if they steal from you, certain types of theft, certain types of vandalism. But crime in the cyber world, so there's different definitions of crime, and you need to look at what your policy contract says. So there's computer fraud crime where a third party will hack. So let's say I actually know a lot more about tech than just how to use my iPhone, Will, and I figure out how to hack into your system, and I wire a bunch of money to an offshore account in my name or somebody else's name. That's crime.
Yep.
If John sneaks into your system though and wires money to himself, that's not crime. That's employee embezzlement. Unless you have the right kind of endorsement or the right kind of fidelity bond, that's not covered under crime. Right. So there's all different kinds of ways that crime can be defined. And that's where you need to have your broker look at that and explain to you in depth what is actually covered and what is not covered. And it's amazing how much they divide up all these different kinds of crimes, because if it was all under one umbrella, the insurance companies would go broke. Because then if everything's a crime, nothing's a crime, right? And if nothing's a crime, everything's a crime. So they really have to strictly define that. But that too, that saves you all premium dollars, because if all crime was included, everybody would be paying premiums based on all the crime, and you could never afford to be insured. So it's easy, and me too, I poke fun at the insurance agency, but there's a lot of things that they do where really we ought to be sending them flowers, thanking them for doing it, because in the long run, they saved us all money from other people's stupid behavior. So you really need to dig into your contract and see the different areas of crime and how they're defined.
Yeah. And John, what is the assumptions that you're seeing clients make that really is hurting them?
Number one assumption is if I have stuff in the cloud, it's just magically backed up.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I moved to 365 and Microsoft says everything is backed up. So if I get ransomware, I'll just call Microsoft and get them to give me another copy of it. Without going down the rabbit hole of Microsoft shared responsibility matrix, it doesn't work like that, right? It in no way works like that. If you don't have a backup strategy and solution, you cannot just assume the cloud provider of your data is going to get it to you. The other assumption is that my MSP will just do it for me, right? The MSP is just automatically doing everything. And let's take a look at backups. A big change that is happening now, and I think by next year will be across the vast majority of insurance underwriting questionnaires is not just do you back up your data, because they've been asking that. Now they want to know how often do you test your backups, right? Because if you get ransomware or hacked, doesn't matter, but you don't have access to your data now, right? How long does it take you to be back up and running? Insurance companies are looking at that. There's cost to that, right? Like Rusty talked about, lost revenue. There's all kinds of things you can file a claim against. So the insurance company wants to know, how long will it take you to be back, right? And a lot of companies just say, oh, well, my MSP backs up all my stuff every night at midnight, so 24 hours. That's a good answer, right? That's not at all how this works, right? If you have 16 terabytes of corporate data, where is it? How long does it take to move? I was talking to a client the other day. They have an on-premises physical file server. That's fine, good, it's in there, right? I don't care if it's lightning, cybercrime, whatever it is. If that thing's dead tomorrow, how long does it take to get the new one in? Well, we've seen supply chain things hit. I mean, Will will tell you, as the owner of an MSP, some days we're waiting weeks for routine equipment just because it's back ordered, right? If you don't have a strategy for how am I going to be back up and running, then you can in no way assume it's going to happen within 24 hours or some other arbitrary number, right? So a lot of companies are looking at these items on a checklist and just assuming their MSP is going to magically make it happen in some almost arbitrary time frame. And that the MSP is prepared to go back in time 6 months later and demonstrate they were doing the right thing 6 months ago. Those are the two biggest assumptions. Cloud backup is a magic thing that just fixes itself. And my MSP is magically prepared to get me back up and running in 24 hours.
John, I think something else that made me think of as you were talking there is when people take their applications that were in the house into the cloud, what responsibility do you still have? And Rusty, I would like for you to weigh on this as well. As what responsibility do you have from an insurance standpoint, but also if you're meeting any kind of compliancy, John, that you still have to maintain inside your brick and mortar?
It's simple answer. All of it. Okay.
So
the cloud, it's all your responsibility. Right?
Nothing changes. Nothing really changes.
Nothing changes. Well, I compared the cloud to the airport parking lot, the garage at the airport, right? It has a security gate. It has cameras. It's got the little guy in a Segway or a golf cart, right? There is security for vehicles at the airport parking lot. There is. Would you ever park there with valuables in an unlocked car? Like, no way. There's no way you would trust it. You would still secure your car to the level you're comfortable with. Whether it's a low jack or a club, you're going to make a decision and secure it. Then if you had an incident, if you get back after a vacation and your car is broken into and the stereo is missing, you would not call the airport and say, I expect you to replace the stereo in my car, right? You would go to your insurance carrier and deal with it that way. The cloud is the same way. It's a big parking lot for your applications data for whatever. You're still expected to secure your own workload or data. The parking lot is the cloud.
But I agree. And here's a big benefit you have when you have the right kind of insurance too. And I love your analogy, John. So the beautiful thing when you have the right kind of insurance is a little thing called subrogation. So if you have done everything right and it can be proved that it's somebody else's fault that the damage happened to you, that insurance company is going to go after that person for you. And they'll also spend above the limits to defend you, right? While you're having this battle, and so that's when they really go to bat for you. They may pay for your new stereo, but if they can find out who took it, they'll go after that guy or gal and make them pay. That's where they are on your side, and you are responsible for all of it because it is your baby. And I want to add my assumption that people make that I hate the most is this one: it will never happen to me. I'm too small. No one cares.
But it's never happened to me.
Then you know what I say? Then why are you even considering buying insurance? If it's never going to happen, why are you filling out this application? If you really believed it would never happen to you, you wouldn't buy any insurance. It's just an excuse to not want to have to comply. And and so there's no amount of data that's too small that somebody on the dark web doesn't want. So you
Rusty,
can think,
and I hear a lot, not that it won't happen to me. It's never happened. I don't have enough to even matter, and I always tell people, like, even if it's your personal, I'm even going to go down to your personal level, right? If your computer gets compromised and you lose all your pictures of all your family, your grandkids, your kids, there's not a value that you can replace that, right? That's a sentimental value. And I take it to the business side of things that, what every minute I'm down, every day, hour, every day I'm down, every week I'm down from an attack as a business owner, you have to calculate all that cost, that the hard and soft cost of being down.
you know what? I've not had a car wreck, but I still pay for car insurance. My house has never burned down, but I still insure my home. I mean, if you want to take that logic, just go with it all the way. Drive around, and because it really is about making you whole after something happens. And if there's no insurance policy backing you up, you're going to have to write some pretty big giant checks to make yourself whole. And then you're not whole because you're the one who's paid for it. So you're even more in the hole instead of being whole, I laugh at that logic because then there's never any continuity in that argument. If they really, just wipe out all the insurance, and if nothing's ever happened to you, just don't have any, because it's just never going to happen to you.
That's an insurance sales guy answer for sure. I'll give you another side of the coin from the risk management guy, right?
Yeah.
So they don't have insurance. I don't care. You don't care. But then what are we doing to identify and mitigate risk? If that's the acceptable level, right? If your business relies on trucks to operate, you probably have a plan where if I can have 2 trucks in the shop at one time, but 3, I got to go to get a rental truck from you probably have thought this out, right? You have insurance for the trucks, but it's probably not full replacement. You've come to this place where I can handle a little pain, but I can't handle a lot of pain. I would just challenge you to do the same thought process with your IT. I can handle this pain. I can't handle that pain. And if you can't handle this pain, then is insurance a viable way to mitigate the pain, right? You have rental car coverage in your, my car. If my family car, because I got teenagers, if that's in an accident, I have rental car coverage because we got to get the family around. But in my other car, in my coupe, I don't, because if it's in the shop, guess what? I'll be all right without it.
Well, and here's what's beautiful about what you said too, though, is if your assurance outside of insurance, if you're taking your strategy, John, and taking a calculated look at the risk and putting steps in place to mitigate or wave your magic wand, avoid much of it, you're probably already well positioned then to get reasonably cost insurance, and you can have the best of both, right? Because you'll be doing all the things that the insurance guys want you to do anyway. That's really a non-issue because you're already doing those things.
Yeah, Rusty, I mentioned that I've seen so many companies, where they're able to fill out the checkbox and where their premiums actually drop and not go up like everybody else is going, because they're able to meet those requirements of the insurance company. And then the insurance company has less risk at that point.
Yep. And as of late, what we've seen a lot of is, cost of cyber liability has doubled and sometimes even tripled. So it's even a win right now when someone's premium stays the same, or maybe only goes up 15% as opposed to 3 times what they paid last year. But you can mitigate those increases by behaving well. And to John's point, why would you not want to behave well anyway? Even when insurance pays, nobody's happy that their house burned down. Even when insurance pays, no one's happy that they got a ransomware attack, right? So you would hope that we would not want these things to happen to begin with, and would take the steps necessary to keep that from happening.
Yeah.
And the right partner walking you through these underwriting documents is going to help you make business decisions that are more aligned with your overall strategy, right? How long can you be down? What data is critical to your organization, right? I'll tell little vector choice behind the scenes. We're talking about SharePoint, and we have a site for a fantasy football pool, right? Well, if that gets locked, but it's there and it's business and we use it. But honestly, can we survive it if that's down? Of course we can survive it, right? So not all your data is critical business data, but this process of just going through these things and having these discussions with the right partners helps you identify what is critical data. And then I get guidance from my CEO, from my leaders saying, this is what I can't live without. It can never be down. I don't care if you have to build a whole separate parallel environment. This can never be down. That may be the case in your business. Versus, well, this could be down for like a week. We'll survive. And there's a lot in between. But this process helps you as a business leader provide that guidance to your whole staff. Hey, the CFO may look at it this way, but HR looks at it this way. What is the business solution we're solving for, and how are we aligning these tools to enable the CEO's decision or the ultimate owner's decision?
Yeah, and John, thank you guys so much for this. I know we're coming up to the end. And please, if you have any additional questions, please throw it in the chat here. What I want to offer you guys, and you can use the URL down below. If you got your phone, you can do the QR code. But I want to offer you time with John. I don't care if you're a client or just someone that jumped on this call with us today. Is let John actually review your risk and where you're at in your business from a compliancy standpoint, what you're doing, what if you're a client of ours, what we're offering you that doesn't meet insurance standards or your compliancy standards in your state or any kind of federal related or state related standards there. Please use that QR code. John, anything, I mean, what give the audience an idea of what you're talking to them about during this call.
Well, since you just threw a bunch of work on my plate, what I'm going to do is throw the same amount of work on Rusty's plate. I'm going to take a look at your policy. I'm going to take a look at, and there's a little bit of a difference if you're our client or not our client, just what I have my own immediate access to. But I'm going to help align your current state to what you've committed to doing. And I won't say it's you misrepresented or not. That's not my position, right? But I'm going to take a look at that list, and I'm going to take a look at how I would answer it. And then I'll go a step further. I'm going to show it to Rusty and say, hey, Rusty, does this make sense for what the client's trying to do? Right. And maybe even get you, since we're talking so much about all the other things Rusty brings, maybe there's another point of it that Rusty can bring too. So two things, I'll assess you and then I'll have Rusty weigh in.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you guys so much for being on today. Here, if you guys want to reach out to Rusty directly, here's his contact information. He supports clients in multiple states, so he can definitely help you. Also, if you want to reach out to us here at Vector Choice, info@vectorchoice.com, and our phone number that they can get, that my team will get it to either me or John, or my team will be able to help. But please, if you don't have cyber insurance, I highly suggest getting it. If you need help with your insurance forms, hey, reach out to us. John will be glad to review that. And based on what you have in your environment, regardless if you're a client or not, we'll help you and get you through that, so you can make sure that if you ever get hit, that one chance of getting hit with a cyber attack, and I'll tell you, and I said one chance, and probably John and Rusty will agree with this. A lot of times when people get hit with a cyber attack, it's quickly they start getting hit again, because they know, the hackers know, that you're very vulnerable. Unless you bring someone in like us and say, hey, we're going to implement these security measures right now to protect yourself. So, and Rusty,
the thing that got you hacked, the account that was compromised, was probably bought on the dark web, and it wasn't sold to just one person, right? It was sold to 12 different companies. That just one of them got you first.
Yep. And so Rusty, I saw that Rusty put his email address in the chat as well. So if you guys want to get it from there, guys, thank you so much for being on today. John and Rusty, thank you for being here. Audience, thank you for being here today as well. We do have another webinar coming up next month. It's going to be on HIPAA. We're going to do we did that last month. We're going to do another spin on the HIPAA compliancy next month. And then in October, we're doing a webinar on PCI compliance, and how, if you take a credit card, you have to be PCI compliant. And we're going to be talking about that in October. You'll be getting invites from us as well on these different webinars. Again, thank you guys so much for being on with me today.